Hello and welcome to week 33's Dinosaur, another 7 curious, interesting, hopefully useful things I saw last week. So let's crack on. The first one is Apple iPhone Pro, iPhone 12 Pro's new LiDAR detector or sensor. So I'll explain what that is. So the new Apple iPhone coming out, the iPhone 12 Pro, has a sensor in it which is really interesting. It's a LiDAR sensor. These aren't new. We've seen these in sort of one-off projects. Things like Google's Tango project a couple of years ago that sort of died a death really. However, it's now in a phone and will be available to anybody with enough money to afford the iPhone 12 Pro. So what a LiDAR sensor is it sends out beams of light like a radar and pings them back off things and find out how far things are away. So we've had sort of broad versions of this using cameras to look at the difference in perspective of the scene and trying to figure out whether things are in front of other things. But this is now using proper LiDAR. Really powerful sensor. So what you're seeing on the left-hand side is how quickly it can scan a scene using its inbuilt LiDAR. What you're seeing on the right-hand side, just for reference, is a couple of demos ago, a couple of beta versions ago, is just how crude it was. It's still pretty good, but also you can see how good it is now. So it's not only doing the depth sensing, it's filling in all the meshes, those sorts of things. So why is this useful? If you play Pokemon Go, all of a sudden Pokemon can be behind things and poking up from behind bushes because it knows what they look like in 3D space. If you are at IKEA, this is great for fitting furniture into people's houses. If you work for a broadband company, for instance, you can scan a room and find out the best place for a broadband router because you know the 3D shape of the room pretty quickly. So there's lots of uses for LiDAR. What we'll do with it, what you'll do with it, what anybody will do with it is up to you. But it's really, really fast and it's out there right now. So watch out for this when it does actually launch. Flying cars have been made legal in New Hampshire, you'd be happy to know. So this isn't quite as straightforward as it seems because there's a huge debate raging on, which is why it caught my eye on the sort of motoring forums, about the fact that flying cars do not exist. Depending on what side of that on, it's literally 50-50. Are they drivable aeroplanes or are they flying cars? It might seem silly, but in this case what it means is you can drive your aeroplane on a road to an airport and take off. That's what the law allows you to do. What it doesn't allow you to do is have some sort of drone thing that can drive along and you can take up with your quadcopter ginormous thing. So it doesn't allow you to take off on public roads. It allows you to drive your aeroplane to an airport on a road. So whilst I thought it was interesting because of the debate about this sort of Jetsons future where we're all expecting to have flying cars, which we haven't got, it is sort of starting to set the seeds of those, could we be taking off at places at the side of the road or the designated urban areas where we can take off, so we can drive it from our garage to the takeoff zone and then take off from there. We don't really know yet, however, it's starting to happen that the seeds of the Jetsons future have been sown. Spherical geometry, now if you're motion sick then I would turn away now, but this is a really interesting demo and this is from a developer of a game called Hyperbolica. And hyperbolic geometry is it's a little bit like our normal geometry with distance and left, right, up and down. However, just out of interest, he said, let's explore what spherical geometry might feel like when you're actually in it. So what spherical geometry is the opposite of our perspective, really. So things that are far away are impossibly big, and as you walk towards them, they get smaller, to a certain extent, to their real size. So as you can see here, you can see things, the further they are away, bigger they get. So you can see a rock that will just get absolutely huge as you walk away from it. So really, really interesting. What you do with this, heaven only knows. It's really interesting. So whether this can be used in any sort of media, TV, whatever it is, it might be a really cool advert, don't know yet. But it's essentially, it's a really cool effect looking for a use. So I thought I'd bring it to your attention. Elon Musk is maybe digging a huge tunnel from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. So this is basically lots of people snooping around as the Tesla and Elon Musk fans do. So this has been sort of pieced together through certain clues. So you can see in the bottom left there is essentially like a tube map for the Las Vegas Loop. Now, the Las Vegas Loop is Elon Musk's Boring Company's first venture. So I might just need to go back a little bit. So the Boring Company is Elon Musk's tunneling and transportation division. And the idea being you bore a tunnel, you suck the air out of the tunnel, and then you can send vehicles or shuttles down that tunnel without air resistance. So if you were trying to go on a tunnel or a train on the ground, in the open air, then you would be subject to air resistance. Now, air resistance gets exponentially more aggressive the faster you go. So if you try to go slowly, it's okay, but if you try to go faster and faster and faster, you'll get more and more and more air resistance slowing you down. You need more and more power. So it's really inefficient to try and go quick, as we know. So if you take away the air, then all of a sudden you don't get that issue. So these tunnels are essentially huge vacuum tubes. You sit inside a pod with air in it, and you zoom down these tunnels. So he's creating one under Las Vegas, essentially joining all the cool bits of Las Vegas together, all the most used parts. That's going ahead right now. There's no secret about that. However, if you look at the route map, it does actually say at the bottom of that to Los Angeles, and lo and behold, some tents have appeared halfway, well, not halfway, but on the journey in between Las Vegas and LA. So obviously, if you've got boring equipment, tents, you've also got job listings locally for people to help out with this. It's sounding like he's actually trying to build a 225-mile tunnel between LA and Vegas. So this is obviously his end goal, is to get these used like properly and go from coast to coast in America. To essentially reinvent the railroad. So this is very Elon Musk, reinventing space travel, reinventing the car, reinventing the train. So seems to be his goal, is to reinvent all forms of transport. So if you're a horse right now, I'd be really worried. He's probably having a go at you next. Next one is Google's Ocean of Books. This is a really interesting. We saw a few of these years ago when the Google Maps API first came out. People used it for weird things, but this is kind of curious in that it's taken a whole load of novels and books and reference books and all sorts of things, non-fiction, everything. It's used machine learning to cluster them together in their themes. What it's then done is created, again using machine learning, to create generative islands. And then within those islands, it puts all the books of the author. So this is the Stephen King island, this is The Shining. You click on The Shining, you'll go through to a Google Books page. And if you say get the book, it'll take you through to Amazon or wherever to go and get the book. So again, I haven't seen one of these in a few years, but it's really interesting how it can seamlessly add all of these things together to make a really cool, seamless exploration. So this is essentially a book website. Done in a really curious, interesting way, hence why it caught my eye. So yeah, if you're into websites, this is an interesting way of doing it. Online shopping has been caught out recently, and as I don't know if it's Jacob or Jacob, so let's say Jacob for now. A developer whose seemingly his mission is to call out these nefarious practices of websites. So this you can see here that says 14 people are currently looking at this product. We've all seen these sorts of messages on websites. It turns out when you click on them, it's blatant that there literally is just a tiny piece of code in the HTML or the JavaScript in the website, or jQuery if you're going to be arguing about that, that actually just generates a random number. And if you don't speak code, there is a summary of it on the right hand side, but what you can see, it's setting an interval for 5 seconds, and within that interval, every 5 seconds, it will generate a random number between 12 or 3 and 15. So that's what it's doing. So that 14 people are currently looking at this product is trying to be a behavioral nudge for you to think there is a scarcity. So it is creating false scarcity to try and get you to click it and add it to your cart by thinking other people are going to click it. So that's particularly naughty. Now this also extends to those little things you usually get at the top of websites that say offer ends in 5 hours 43 minutes. He also goes into a lot of detail about why those are happening and how those are happening. And again, most of those are just absolute cobblers. So if you reset your IP address or something like that, it thinks you're a new person and resets the timer. So there's a lot of really nefarious, naughty tactics going on online websites. So yep, watch out for those. Now finally, Spot the Dog. So usually a good spot in one of these for Spot the Dog. So this is Boston Dynamics robot that was made available about a month ago to public use. You can buy one of these from their website. I think it's about $70,000 or something like that. So yeah, so the company that's behind this is Formant, who are a specialist in robot fleet tracking, I guess. So if you have a robot fleet, then you will use their software to essentially just check in on them and what they're doing. So what they've done is they've created a public version of that. They'd allow you to play with their software. And what they've done is they've used a Spot the Dog in San Francisco. You can go to the website, you can sort of sign in with your email address, your details, and you give it a little description about why you would like to control Spot the Dog. And if you win, if they choose you out of the hat, essentially, then you get an hour with Spot the Dog walking around San Francisco doing whatever you want to do. Clearly, there's a load of people behind Spot the Dog with a kill switch just in case. However, I thought that was really interesting about these hugely technical things which we've been seeing for the last couple of years. With more and more fear or more excitement, all of a sudden you can control around a foreign city around the world. So if you're up for that, go and have a check out the websites at the bottom of the screen and sign up. And with that, we've come to the end. So thank you very much, and I will see you next week.